My father, who was really the first inspiration I had with this business of oral tradition. When I was a youngster, I used to crawl in bed with Dad sometimes. He'd be sleeping, and Dad, wake up, tell me a story. And Dad would use the canvas of the ceiling. I call it a canvas, for Dad was really a story smith, and he could paint with his words. He would tell me stories all the way from his growing up on the Blackfeet Reserve in the St. Mary's Valley. They're listening to other tribal elders speak of their stories. One in particular comes to mind, a fellow by the name of Chick Lewis. Chick Lewis you can find in the history books as being one of Custer's scouts. And he was an elder at that point in the late 1920s and 1930s. And no TV, no computer games in those days. The kids heard that Grandpa Chick was going to tell ghost stories. Everybody finished their chores early and got over to Grandpa Chick's outside of Bab there and listened to those stories, including Custer's Last Stand. He told the story from he was a mixed blood, half Blackfeet and half Caucasian, therefore he was there to take the paycheck, but personally I think he did a real good job on June 25th, 1876, scouting for Custer. Oh, what the heck, I'm not constrained right now. I'll leave this so somebody can sit there. I'm not constrained with what I do in the tent. On Saturday, I'll be doing, I think, 2 shows with the multimedia aspect that I have boiled in on DVD with the pictures behind me. We use that on Saturday. I'm just going to kind of go impromptu what pops into my mind, and this, of course, popped into my mind. This is called In the Valley of the Little Bighorn. It's on an earlier CD, but what this does is it takes a soldier's perspective riding down into the Valley of the Little Bighorn on the 25th of June, 1876. This was part of a large campaign. Custer was just a part of one of 3 pincers that was converging on the Greasy Grass or the Little Bighorn Valley in order to punish the Indians who did not report to their recently, we had the incredible shrinking reservation syndrome. I don't know if you've studied your Western history, this is what was occurring. And Custer wanted to strike first. Therefore, he hustled his 7th Cavalry. He was actually reprimanded in the previous year by President Grant for exposing corruption. Actually, can you believe it? Corruption, the back of the White House, giving political favoritism to people. Okay. I'm just thinking about our Homeland Security and our FEMA directors right now, how they must feel. Any case, Custer did hustle his men into position, and they did attack on the afternoon. And in the time, according to one of our warriors, in the time it takes a hungry man to eat his lunch, Custer was annihilated by a superior force, both in tactics and in numbers. And there were repeating rifles there, and they were in the hands of the Indians. People wonder, where did they come from? Well, the whiskey traders from Fort Benton, Montana were trading repeating rifles to our Blackfeet Indian peoples, north of the Canadian border, north of the Medicine Line, at a place called Fort Whoop-Up. My great-great-grandfather, William Gladstone, actually built Fort Whoop-Up. It was kind of a crack house on the plains, but it did put our Blackfeet in charge of a lot of these repeating rifles. And some of our warriors that were still understandably upset from having their families slaughtered on January 23rd, 1870, on the banks of the Marias River, what we call the Baker Massacre, did attend the Little Bighorn. This is for all the combatants in the Valley of the Little Bighorn. The sun rose far to the east, where we had once been born. The orders had been given to be riding before morn. Mounted men on cavalry, we faced a trail of thorns. in the valley of the Little Bighorn. Reno, Benteen, and Custer led our command that day to slaughter Sioux and Cheyenne, camped beyond Clay. Well, who would see survival and who would be forlorn in the valley of the Little Bighorn? I was a soldier who rode to the tune of a bugler's Gary Owen on a June afternoon. Away from my loved ones, away from my home, apart from the woman that I held as my own. A leave will be granted to the man without help, that kills the first savage and brings me his scalp. For what is the reason for our presence in this land? Has cold lust or bloodthirst taken our command? Well, it doesn't really matter now, heading towards north in the valley of the Little Bighorn. There made 3 battalions from the 7th Cavalry, one with Major Reno, another with Benteen. But glory followed Custer's men, so with glory we were torn from the valley of the Little Bighorn. Well, I was a soldier who rode to the tune of the bugler's Gary Owen on a June afternoon. Away from my loved ones, away from my home, apart from the woman that I held as my own. Ford the stream and went in camp, kill everyone we see. Long will live this day for us, the 7th Cavalry. Fire swept the prairie and dust hid the flames, when out of the haze rode the masters of plains. Then death they delivered, we invaders from far, in the battle of the Little Bighorn. The sun arose far to the east, where we had once been born. The orders had been given to be riding before morn. Mounted men on cavalry, we faced a trail of thorns in the valley of the Little Bighorn. Mounted men on cavalry, we faced a trail of thorns in the valley of the Little Bighorn. Ya, hey, ya, hey, ya, hey, ho, hey, ya, hey, ya, hey, ya. Had the, you know what? He's like almost totally deaf right now, so he'd have his feelings hurt. But you know what a BLT is on the Sioux Reservation? Black lab on toast. Just joking. Just joking. Okay. You gotta look out. Sioux are very numerous. Okay. I was very fortunate to visit 2 cultural sites, also archaeological sites along our Rocky Mountain front, prehistorically and historically still known by our Blackfeet people as the backbone of the world. One was north of Havre, what we call Cypress Hills Provincial Park. Cypress Hills was one of those points that was extremely popular in the migration, rotation of our Blackfeet Indian peoples, because there were lodgepole pines there. And so many things. Of course, our teepees were constructed of lodgepoles, but they were also like Goodyear tires, and they did wear down after a time. So we would cut lodgepoles there, but there was one point in particular. There was a campfire hearth that was used continuously every year for about 8,000 years. The excavation is being conducted by the University of Calgary. Jerry, a friend of mine, is a professor up there, and he said, Jack, this is so amazing. He's finding the different technological ages. About 1,200 years ago, the bow and arrow first came in. Prior to that, though, there was a device called the addle-addle. Actually, there's a guy in Manhattan, Addle-Addle Bob, that makes a living making addle-addles, and there's actually quite the, I think they ought to, they have bow season is opening up this weekend here in Montana, but I think they ought to have an earlier season, an addle-addle season. I don't know if you know what an addle-addle is, or if you even have them. Do you have them demonstrated here at the park at all?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, cool. Then you can, on Saturday, come back. Saturday is going to be a rockin' time. There'll be a lot of people here and a lot of different performances, and I'm sure it'll go on into the evening. But the addle-addle was a device, basically, it was very similar to a chuck-it in principle. You ever see those things you can put a tennis ball in and then go, and then the ball would just fly? Well, instead of doing that, there's a spear. Actually, the spear is called a dart. There'll be a little bit of bend in that, but it's like a Randy Johnson fastball, and you can whip that thing with the advantage of a stick. At the end of the stick, there's a hook, and that makes basically this whipping action, like a bullwhip, rap. And then the spear, the dart, actually flexes a little bit. I think the world record addle-addle throw, for launching a dart is around 800 feet. This technique was used, you could launch darts into the midst of herd animals quite easily, and at close range, the velocity on these things is quite deadly also. And you talk about the skill our people must have had. If you try one of these, you'll feel like, man, you're been intoxicated or something. You're trying to walk the line for the officer or something. But the system was very efficient. However, there was the beginning of that system in this archaeological dig, and then down below that there were just plain spear points. So all the technological ages were represented. And he told me, Jack, what we've also found in further examining the stories of our people, every single campsite had around it what I call a cosmological compass. There were points, there were mountains, there were ranges, there were groves, streams, lakes, bodies of water, geographic points, sacred geography. Every one would trigger a story, would trigger a memory, either within the mythological realm, legendary realm, the personal experiential realm, and this is what kept our people informed, inspired, and kept our people vivified with who we were, because constantly our elders were telling us these stories. Up close to the mountains in the wintertime, there was a popular story called The Bear Who Stole the Chinook. For in the long ago time, somehow a grizzly bear had stolen the power of the Chinook wind, placed it into an elk skin bag, drug it into his lodge, and well, something had to be done. A young orphan boy rose and he said, I will find the Chinook no matter what. Our Blackfeet actually called it the Black Wind because of the presence of high bands of black clouds above the mountains. 97 miles an hour last January in St. Mary's Valley, 115 miles an hour on Logan Pass. What they call a hurricane in Florida is a little breeze over on the res. This is the story of the orphan boy and his 5 animal elders recovering that wind from the bear who stole the Chinook. Do you want to learn a little bit of sign language before we go on?
Yeah.
Huh? Anybody want to learn some sign language? Yeah. Okay, right now, the bear. Now go. Okay, like this. Bear, don't be shy. The bear who stole, left hand, palm down. This is American Indian Sign Language, to steal something. Who stole the wind, the Chinook. Feel free, let go of the sound effects, but be careful. Now give me a growl and do this. That means I'm angry. Well, the snow came early and lay on deep. The cold blown bitter made the women weep. Our men tried hard but could find no cane. In our children's bellies are crying pains. Our elders gathered in the eve and dawn. They prayed and waited and looked, but little did they know that way up high the bear had stole the Chinook. Okay, sign it. The bear had stole the Chinook. I'll do it slower so everyone can do it. You ready? The bear had stole the Chinook. Well, a ragged orphan boy living alone called to the animals in his home. Howling magpie flew on hen. With coyote and weasel, there was 4 of them. As her council met, the magpie caught as her hero shivered and shook. He said, my relatives told me so. He said, the bear has stole the Chinook. Sign it now. The bear has stole the Chinook. Good. Our heroes journey to release the wind turned west to the mountain bear's den. For days they teamed and traveled along. Together they did ascend up to the den that held the Chinook. Well, the grizzly snored and snarled in his sleep. Owl crept close into his lodge, peeped. Ooh. Ooh. Bear punched Owl's eyes with a stick. So they sent in a brother who was lightning quick. The weasel slithered easy through the hole and found the elkskin bag of the crook. The bear in rage roared, go away. And the bear said, I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. Then our friends made medicine smoke appear and blew it in the grizzly bear's tent. The big old grizz fell fast asleep. His coyote crept on in. He found the bag where the wind was kept and pulled it to the light of day. There a prairie chicken picked the stitches out. Now the prairie chicken was a consultant, and the sign for a consultant, everybody. Then the Chinook blew on its way. The Chinook blew on its way. Bear burst suddenly from his sleep. Bear said, our friends all fled, their job complete. Will the bear in vain pursue the wind? Oh, but the warm wind never was again his friend. Now bear sleeps underground the winter long. In his lodge he grumbles and looks back to the days of the winter warmth. Back to the bear who stole the Chinook. To the bear who stole the Chinook. Well, I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. Now, sing it in a bear voice and sign it. It's your test now. Well, I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. One more time. I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. Give me a growl. I'd like to play a song that I wrote, and it appears the last the last track on a 2-CD set. It's called Blackfeet Storysmith. I sat down in 2001, in January, February, and March. My dad had what they said was terminal cancer. He'd been in some pretty bad spots before in his life, between combat action in World War II and just living living until he was 43 years old when he sobered up, living about 20 years as an alcoholic. Some pretty desperate times there. But never did anybody pronounce him dead. And basically that's what the doctors did. Told my sister that your dad is only going to be around for about 3 or 4 more months, so get busy what you want to do. He beat it. He had his entire stomach removed, but he lived 2 more years and went out on the road with me for 2 more years. And he was thin, but he, talk about the power of the mind and the mind to control what the body does. He loved his coffee. That's one addiction he said he would not give up, and he kept drinking coffee till the end. But he sat down and put his morning pot of coffee on. It was on the June 28th, 2003. Mom was cooking breakfast. She said, relax, Wally, I'll call you when it's ready. And 10 minutes later, she called him, and he was in his recliner. He was in the happy hunting ground. And so it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool way to go. This song is called In a Child's Eyes. And one of the ways seeking, I guess, healing and gaining some closure, I was able to notice in my children's eyes, in my son Scott and my daughter Mariah, who actually will be performing with me in the tent on Saturday. Mariah has a lot of sign language down, the complete song, and also some other preparations we made, especially for the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial, and my son Scott also. When I look in their eyes, when you look in children's eyes, you can see the spark, you can see the same flash that is in elders' eyes. Children having departed so quickly from the great mystery. We have eternity, so far as we know, that precedes us, eternity that comes after us, and here we are in a little temporal period of time. The eyes tell the story. That excitement, that spark of coming from the eternal and then entering back into the eternal. In a child's eyes. As I looked into Dad's eyes for the last time, I saw serenity of heart redeemed by love. As I shook his hand and pulled him close, what became our final hug, I felt a bow of sunlight reach us from above. From the mist of ether, life delivers promise. Chasing rainbows, finding joy to rise anew. Today I took a chance, slowed the dance, and fell on bended knee. When I looked into a child's eyes, I saw thee. Earth and sky are unified in story. Elders followed rainbows in the fall. They become like children again. Earth and sky are unified in story. Elders followed rainbows in the fall. May we sing like children again as we breathe our final amen. When I looked into a child's eyes, look into a child's eyes. When I look into a child's eyes, I see you. I see you. Thank you. A lot of you folks are pretty familiar with my work, some are not. I was born out of Seattle, Washington. My dad was discharged from the battleship Iowa, USS Navy. World War II is behind an anti-aircraft gun. One of the highlights of my listening, and one of the earliest stories I recall him telling me, was the story, different stories of the kamikazes, but one in particular called The Last Kamikaze. 3 hours after the victory flag went up in August of 1945, this was after a few days, as much as a week after the last A-bomb was dropped on the Japanese people there. The Japanese emperor was Hirohito, actually got on the radio and did announce a surrender to Japan. Nobody had ever heard his voice before. When this happened, a lot of the Japanese military came apart because they weren't prepared to lose face. And about 600 officers committed suicide. A handful of them did board planes and did go for the kamikaze action. One in particular went for the battleship Iowa, and my dad was on the flagship, Admiral Bull Halsey's flagship of the 3rd Fleet there. And everybody was on deck feeling pretty good, you know, talking about what they were going to do after the war. They're getting ready for the occupation, putting on their packs, and the GQ rang. General Quarters says, everybody to their battle stations, there's something coming in, and this kamikaze was coming in fast and closing. 5-inch 38s opened up, flak all over, missed. Upwards of 400 miles an hour, approaching 500 miles an hour, this kamikaze. The 40 millimeters of Marines, they couldn't hit him. It was within about 100 yards when the last 20s opened fire. My dad was on the last battery of 20 millimeters that opened up. I don't know who all missed him, but I'm pretty sure my dad hit him. And it was quite interesting. It wasn't until just about a year before he died, I said, Dad, you know, after that, were there any more kamikazes that you heard about in the fleet? And he said, no. Admiral Bull Halsey actually got on the bullhorn. He said, gentlemen, they tell me the war is over, but I would like to make the announcement, if any more kamikazes come down, just shoot them down in a friendly fashion. Anyways, that was the last shots that were fired in World War II. So I think about this, the connection, you know, my dad growing up listening to stories from Custer's Scout, and one of the obligations of those treaties, all 371 of those treaties between the United States and the ancient pre-existing nations of our American Indian peoples, one of the obligations, we shall be allies and we will come to help one another in time of need. Well, in all the major wars in the last 100 years, American Indians have had the highest rates of volunteerism among any ethnic group in this country. We've served with distinction, with pride, and right now I say a prayer every time I think about it. I have a cousin, a second cousin on the outskirts of Baghdad. He was #1 in his class at Green Beret School, and he's off probably with Special Forces right now, but he's in anti-insurgency campaigns. People are getting hurt and killed over there. And there's a song actually that I'll do with Sometimes Eagles that I'll dedicate to the veterans on Saturday with the visuals. I have the World War II footage and a most highly decorated Blackfeet World War II. But anyways, amazing slice of life. My last name, however, came in with the Hudson's Bay Company. The Hudson's Bay Company was the world's largest corporation 200 years ago. Hudson's Bay Company had the good fortune of having its native England, where it has its charter, had the most powerful navy in the world 200 years ago, and the most powerful merchant fleet 200 years ago. And by good fortune and serendipity and the fact that England had a lot of coal in 1730, the first time that in a wide scale ancient sunlight was harnessed to drive this new invention called the steam engine. This was the dawn of what we call the Industrial Revolution. And this was the dawn of our reliance and increasing reliance on fossil fuels. Later on, that morphed into petroleum products and natural gas products. And we must remind ourselves that humans initially were solar-powered beings. Everything that we utilize, you think of it from our horses to the plant food that we consumed, the animals that we consumed fed on the plant food that was all a dividend from the annual sunlight and the interaction of the mysterious with this sphere of earth and the water and everything. It is quite a miracle. But anyways, we can see now, we do our research, we understand what terms like peak oil are, and we can start adapting our individual behavior to hopefully shift the market away from this waterfall that we could go over. Enough said. Let's go into the Hudson's Bay Company. Well, I was riding on my pony, hunting bison on the plains, when the moccasin telegraph reported something strange. There was someone building lodges made with stone and logs. They had bushes on their faces and funky-looking dogs, loading off big bundles, triple-wide canoes full of trading items. Out of sight, creation sang the blues. Tomorrow's our grand opening. Grab your robes and furs. We'll wheel and deal and feast and drink until you engines purr. Oh, we didn't know shopping. We didn't know shopping. We didn't start shopping. We couldn't go shopping until the Hudson's Bay Company. With horses and dogs up and piled out with skins, it was unfamiliar territory we had wandered in. Bushy-faced Napequans that said we'll smoke and drink. So we prepared our sacred pipe, them Napequans just winked. When the smoke was over, they said, we've got a gift for you that'll fill your head with visions, make you strong and happy too. Didn't quite know what to think before we drank that rum. It's fire, water, devil, starter, rabbit up the run. They got us ready for shopping. Yeah, we were ready for shopping. They got us ready for shopping at the Hudson's Bay Company. We wanted flintlocks, wool socks, coffee beans, denim jeans, iron awls and musket balls, powder horns and pretty shawls, blankets, buttons, bolts, flannel, silver bells, tallow candles, sugar flour, dark molasses, colored beads, looking glasses, pale ale, gin and brandy, fine wine, hard rock candy. Ride through service was awful handy. Oh, we couldn't stop shopping. Oh, we wouldn't stop shopping. We couldn't go shopping until the Hudson's Bay Company. Oh, just the other day I didn't walk, actually I was at Lowe's. I'd never been in Lowe's. North in Kalispell, I don't know if you've seen it, it's like a big cancer, Kalispell, it's north of the city. Anyway, there's a new Costco going on that I think is a clone of the Costco in Missoula. It's a huge Costco, and anyway, the other one wasn't big enough. So, in October 21st, I think it is, the grand opening, I'm gonna walk in there and start walking up and down the aisles. I'll look to my right, noticing there are mountains of merchandise. To my left, still more mountains of merchandise. Before long, I'll realize that once again, I too have become a victim of the shopping culture. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cowboys and Indians, in the 21st century, Kmart, Walmart, Target, Shopko, Sam's Club, yes, even Costco.com are nothing more than fur trading posts on steroids. Now we got spandex, Gore-Tex, Nike Airs, gummy bears, ceiling fans, frying pans, turkey, veal, a shrimper, spam, sail, cycle, sports, rackets, rollerblades, team jackets, keyboards to surf the net on a tidal wave of debt. MasterCard, Visa card, Christopher Columbus card. Christopher Columbus said, and I quote, "It pays to discover American espresso, Lord. Every kind of card, we can't stop shopping. We can't stop shopping. Oh, we can't stop shopping. Can't stop shopping. We can't stop shopping at the Hudson's Bay Company." Understand what did occur in regards to perceptions with the encounter Captain Lewis had with a group of 8 of our Blackfeet teenagers coming back from a horse raid, it's important to understand the foundation of our Blackfeet interaction with the European system. This came a good generation before the Americans showed up on the scene. Remember, the Americans were the Johnny-come-latelys. Heck, they were already, Britain had established itself in the north. Russia had established itself in the east. Spanish had established themselves in the south. And of course, France claimed the territory of Louisiana. But our Blackfeet were trading for items that were created by this Industrial Revolution a good generation before the Americans showed up. So what is referred to in various places in literature as the Lewis and Clark Traveling Magical Show, or at least I have a song by that name, did not impress our Blackfeet. The firearms, the steel tools, the compasses that Captain Lewis would try to make tricks with, all this stuff we'd seen this stuff before. This was Napiquan. Interesting to note, the Blackfeet word for a white man is Napiquan. Napi is our trickster. The literal translation would be trickster man. Trickster man. Tricksters are consumed in the Holy Book, in the Bible. There is the 7 deadly sins. There's a notation of the deadly sins: gluttony and lust and sloth and drunkenness and so on. Well, Napi had 8 of the 7 down perfectly. So we notice, especially in this mysterious liquid we call Napioki. Napioki was passed around before the trading started. It had incredible properties. It was almost like a vision quest in a bottle, but of some different properties. It was a cheap vision quest. In addition, they started cutting the alcohol with other ingredients, which are pretty horrible to even contemplate. But we noticed I found this in my research in a Hudson's Bay journal. There was a Blackfoot chief that discovered it had properties. Around the fire, he would take a little sip, but did not swallow. Then he would spit it upon the fire. If it flared up, it was fire water. That is how fire water got its name. There are later accounts that it burned when it went down, but I challenge anyone to find an older account than that on how fire water got its name. It was a test for purity for drugs on the Northern Plains. Now, with the trading interaction, though, our Blackfeet only traded, usually the cycle was twice a year at the Hudson's Bay Company posts, and we only had 2 to the far north. So we didn't have a whole lot of interaction with the alcohol. There were short periods of craziness, but then we went back out and everything was as it was before. Later on with the whiskey trading forts, later on when the Americans came in, and when the civil portion of the American system broke down after the American Fur Company went belly up, bankrupt during the Civil War, we had the free traders come in that were cutthroats when the territory of Montana was formed, and we had a thing called the Whoop-Up Trail. I mentioned before Whoop-Up. Anyway, it's covered quite completely on the Buffalo Cafe CD, that portion of our state's history. I would like to play right now a song called The Lewis and Clark Rag. This is in our Lewis and Clark show. It's a story that actually Captain Lewis wrote the song, believe it or not. One-hit wonders, well, the first one-hit wonder in this country was Captain Lewis and the Corps of Discovery Band. Went in the studio, #1 on the colonial charts in the spring of 1807. Then, they just kind of disappeared. Well, feel free to sing along with any of these if you know them. The Louisiana Purchase opened up some doors to finance those Napoleonic wars. The deal of the century, but what'll we do with it now? But we gotta beat the French and the British too. Going to that fur trade, yeah, we gotta do it. So he called me up one fortuitous night and asked me if I'd try with all of my might. to put my place in history in the bride. Well, I said, you bet, been called on Clark. Together we were ready to make our mark. We're the Lewis and Clark Corps Discovery Ride. Little did Captain Lewis and the Corps Discovery Band know that almost 200 years later, the famous songwriting duo of Lennon and McCartney would use the same progression in one of their songs. Yes, it is true, and it's on the Abbey Road album. Everybody sing. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer came down upon her head. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer made sure she was dead. But I digress. 15 million bucks seemed fair for an 800,000 miles square tract of land that nearly doubled America's size. So Tom gave us 2,500 bucks, pointed up the Missouri and said, good luck, that's where this country's economic future lies. Yes, and politics and money followed us most all the way. At the head of the Missouri, we found 3 rivers. We named them after Madison, Gallatin, and Jefferson. We boldly go where no one dares. We fight off mosquitoes and grizzly bears. We're really something, though we don't mean to brag. We made friends with all kind of tribes, except for the black, we wouldn't take our jive. We're the Lewis and Clark Corps Discovery. We'll open up the West. Wouldn't it be lovely, the Lewis and Clark Corps Discovery Ride? You know the story. Many of us know the story that on the trip back, Captain Lewis and Clark separated at this point. Captain Clark went close to the original route down southern Montana, took the appropriate shortcuts. His objective, though, was to go over the Bozeman, what is now called the Bozeman Pass, into the Yellowstone River drainage, to both map that territory and try to make contact with the Crow Indian Nation. Actually, the Crow made contact with him in the midst of the night. They run off their horses, I guess, so that one part of that wasn't too. But it's amazing. Captain Clark, in all his map-making adventures, I think over 8,000 miles were traveled and mapped, and I think he was only off by about 40 miles. It was pretty amazing. But it wasn't all Captain Clark. Captain Clark was an astute listener, and he listened to the native peoples, and they were drawing maps in the sand, and they were describing how else was he did he put Flathead Lake in the maps that he created if it wasn't for our native peoples, and being a good listener and respectful of the perceptions of our Indian peoples. Captain Lewis, as he divided, went up north through Hell's Gate, up the Blackfoot River Valley, over the mountains, close to Rogers Pass, a place called Lewis and Clark Pass, and then down into the plains, matching up and digging up some of their belongings that they had cached the year earlier. Many of them were spoiled from being soaked with water, but they recovered about half of the command, about 16 men. I'm not sure the precise number. Then Captain Lewis told his men that he had something to do. He hand-selected what he considered his 3 best men, George Dreyer and the 2 Fields brothers, to take a secret mission, a covert mission into the heart of Blackfeet Indian country to ascertain how far north did the Louisiana Purchase extend. North of the 49th parallel, which was British Hudson's Bay Company territory, or shy. And at a point of revelation called Camp Disappointment, it was determined that the Milk River Ridge was the northernmost extent of the Louisiana Purchase. He had hoped to report back to his almost father figure. He had great admiration, great love for Thomas Jefferson, and wanted to report with great excitement that yes, the Americans could claim a portion of what was British territory because of the Louisiana Purchase. This was not so. Although later on it was discovered the Milk River plays a cruel little trick in twisting north of the border and then dropping down south into the Missouri. This is a digression, it's a sidebar, but it's fascinating. In the first decade of the 1900s, the United States prepared to divert the entire St. Mary's River, which flows into Canada, over the Milk River Ridge in a project into the Milk River, so 100% would flow. This was at the time when people were dreaming of the Panama Canal and diverting huge amounts of water for the good of civilization. Well, into the Milk River, and the Milk River flows into the Missouri. Wow, yeah, we have all this water. A very expensive project. Canada heard about it and immediately started constructing what it is called today, and you could still see parts of it, the Spite Ditch. The Spite Ditch was, they were preparing to divert, after the Milk River flowed into Canada, to divert the entire Milk River back into the St. Mary's River drainage. So they would get 100% of both rivers. It was at that point that a treaty was negotiated and signed. However, the treaty did not mention anywhere, and nowhere were our Blackfeet Indian people even mentioned in the treaty between the United States and Canada, because this water we're talking about originated on Blackfeet Indian country as one of those water rights issues that still have not been resolved. But Captain Lewis did encounter a group of 8 of our horse raiders. It was traditional for young men, for teenagers, to go with the all-pro horse liberators. Oh, did I tell you we had an organization called BETA, Blackfeet for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And so great was our concern for the care of these horses all over, from as far as the Nez Perce, the Salish, the Flathead and the Kootenai, the Crow, the Shoshone, the Sioux, that we were concerned, especially when an intelligence report came to us that these other tribes were mistreating their horses. They were abusing their horses, and we said, we can't let this happen. Liberation! So Operation Horse Liberation went on, and we went far and wide, liberating horses. It turned out the intelligence was actually incorrect. Somebody was passing around bad intelligence, but said, wait a second, the chief said, they have the capacity to mistreat the horses. The situation was that 8 of our young men were driving horses back from the Sioux when we stumbled across 4 of these strangers, long knives on the Missouri. The Hudson's Bay, our friends, the Hudson's Bay Company, had long told us that the Americans would one day come. And now this group of teenagers was the first to encounter the first delegation of Americans. So here we are, the ancient Blackfeet nation and the pubescent but quite cocky American nation visit on the evening of the 26th of July, 1806. Captain Lewis says, children, the great white father of the 17 great nations to the east where the sun rises. The 17 great nations, of course, were the states in the United States of America at that time. And he said, whose people are as numerous as the grass on the plains, and whose people are as powerful, so powerful that they could consume you like a prairie grass fire on the plains. But it is not the wish of the great white father to harm you. We were listening to this. Okay, number 1, we learned that now our land was now owned by the Americans. Well, we'd never put it up for sale, and furthermore, the only one that could make that claim would be the Great Mystery himself, and the Great Spirit had not spoken any such thing to us. Secondarily, he said, oh, we have made friends. We have made friends with the Salish, with the Nez Perce, the Shoshone, the Crow, the Sioux, all these different tribes. We are now friends with. These were all enemies of the Blackfeet. The last thing that really worried us, though, was the fact Captain Lewis told us that he had invited all of these other tribes to come trade in our country with them. This is where it comes down, a very, very critical point that I do not see written up anywhere. I speak about it, somebody's going to write about it, I don't think, give me credit for it. But the difference between the Hudson's Bay Company smoothbore, there's a lot of people with guns around here, old-fashioned historical guns. Ask for, if you can see, a smoothbore Hudson's Bay Company gun. There's no rifling in the barrel. then asked to see the 1792 contract rifle, or the 1803, it's just a modification that was done to the contract rifle, 1803 Harper's Ferry rifle. Both of these had rifling inside the barrels. What this meant was that our Hudson's Bay Company gun, 40 yards, you're lucky if you're going to strike what you're hitting within this far, because shots are all over the place, there's no rifling. But the rifling inside the barrel enables the projectile to fly further, strike harder, and far more accurately. At 150 yards, you could drop a buffalo with a large enough charge. This was demonstrated by Noel Durham, a state patrol officer out of Cutbank, Montana, a friend of mine, also a black powder expert. He's in all of these rendezvous around here. So when I realized that, I understood why we wanted to get a hold of some of those guns. We tried to confiscate some of those weapons before they woke up the next morning. It was a bad, bad scene for our young men. We failed. 2 of our young men were killed. One, calf-looking, was stabbed through the heart. The other, side-hill calf, was shot through the stomach by Captain Lewis's pistol. And as he lay there bleeding to death, the other 6 young men do escape upstream the Two Medicine, up towards where Two Medicine, the Glacier, East Glacier Lodge Hotel is. We had a major encampment up there, coming to get all the cousins, all the relatives to discipline these Americans. But Captain Lewis placed a peace medal around the neck of the Blackfeet that he had just shot. And he wrote in his journal later, so they might better know who we were. And indeed, we understood who the Americans were. Furthermore, the Hudson's Bay Company didn't want the competition and made sure that we were given sweet deals anytime we could prove that we had taken something from a group of American trappers or traders. There's a third reason that is not written I can find anywhere, but the reverence that we held for the beaver, the woodbiter. The beaver was really one of the cornerstone species in our country. If you look at the beaver's role, it is to build dams, to provide wetlands. We know how important wetlands are and the respect of wetlands, because when we don't have any wetlands where they used to be, catastrophic things can happen in this world. The situation with the Americans, they would come in as free trappers and devastate areas, destroying the habitat and destroying the water for all of the different species. Everything, you think about even the wetlands providing a system to recharge aquifers that result in springs. There are so many things that are interconnected. When we go in, we start taking backhoes or start tearing wires out of a very fine-tuned ecological system, we're going to find out that yes, everything is interconnected. The Hudson's Bay Company said, you Blackfeet take care of it. We have no other thing. We wanted to manage the resources. The Americans got in as individuals and they destroyed the resources. So for 25 years we neutralized Americans, and there are hundreds and hundreds of Americans that are unaccounted for because of our Blackfeet depredation on them. But in 1831, peace was made between the American Fur Company and our Blackfeet people. And it has remained so ever since. It was cemented in 1840 by the marriage of my great-great-aunt, Natuya Sixenaki, medicine snake woman, with the chief of operations of the Upper Missouri American Fur Company, Alexander Culbertson. There's a little town on the High Line, Highway 2, close to North Dakota border. It's called Culbertson, Montana. Very prominent in Montana, and really, he was the king of the High Missouri for quite a while. And the first lady of Montana was actually a Blackfeet Indian until 1858 when they retired to Peoria, Illinois. I already mentioned the fact in 1855 there was a treaty that was signed that obligated us to be friends, and perpetually we are friends. For as long as this grass grows, as long as the stars will shine, our Blackfeet will be, and as long as those treaties are intact, or the spirit of those treaties is intact through what we call trust responsibility. I would like to close out this presentation with a song that I wrote entitled When the Land Belonged to God. It's perhaps one of the, I think the best line I've ever come up with was when I was completing this song in Lubbock, Texas, Lloyd Maines, who had just started working with me for Buffalo Cafe. Lloyd Maines is the Grammy-winning producer of the Dixie Chicks. His daughter, the outspoken Natalie Maines, is the lead singer for the Dixie Chicks, but Lloyd has been a legendary producer, has produced thousands of albums, and really got his break in a national spotlight in presenting the Home album to the world, which has been a huge, huge seller, and he's set for life now, but we still produce together. Lloyd took off for the weekend. I was in Lubbock, Texas. I went down to the Palo Duro Canyon area where Charlie Goodnight, legendary Texan, used to have a ranch, a buffalo ranch. And I walked down there, pretty dry compared to Montana. But I was trying to find the last verse to this song. And I'd written Land Belonged to God about Charlie Russell. And I wrote a line, "The purest gift is not of gold, but in art that awakens the soul." And it was like, are you ever in a casino, when the one-armed bandits, and you hit a bing, 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 bing. And I felt, yeah, this is spiritual gold is what I found here. I also found a marvelous letter. There's a van over there. I call it Brother Van. I'm not being irreverent. I'm just being respectful. For Brother Van was a legendary Methodist circuit rider in Montana history, also a good friend of Charlie Russell. Brother Van traveled, I guess he walked, and he also took his mule and horse something like 140,000 miles, he figured, in his lifetime, bringing the good word to the people of Montana, performing ceremonies and everything. Charlie Russell said, "We're both getting up there in years, and pretty soon we're on our way almost to cross over the Great Divide onto the other side." Of course, great metaphorical work here. But he says, on the other side, I know the wild flowers will be sweet and the water will be pure. And it was a really neat way for an elder to look at passing over that line. And that is also included in this song about passing over the divide. This song is dedicated to Charlie Russell and the spirit of the West that either has brought us here or keeps us here. On the spring eve of 16, Charlie Russell departed from his St. Louis home, a young man whose big dreams had delivered a call to the heart. So by train and stagecoach he made his way through an endless sea of grass that glued to the shore of the big sky's unbroken sod, where the land belonged to God. The rising fire of buffalo, mountains were sentinels for creatures below, stirring tones from long ago that survived an eclipse of the soul. As the curtain closed on our noble play, for the stage was struck by cashiers and surveyors, he carefully captured the scenes of the big sky's unbroken sod, where the land belonged to God. Where all the wild kin of man danced in rhythm with the land, where grizzly bear and great wolf first were chiefs, where episodes of old man's travels helped our people first unravel the mystery of sacred time between the earth and the sky. Time respects the careful hand when chosen colors are dry. The vision forever stands. The purest gift is not of gold, but an art that awakens the soul. as we choose our trail up the great divide to an unknown stage on the other side. We might realign with the seams of the big sky's unbroken sod, where the land belongs to God. On the big sky's unbroken sod, where the land belongs to God. Belong to God, we go into a little reprise. So this is how the album ends, so it's fair. But I did the Buffalo Cafe, the second song. The book ended. You've gathered around me, young and old, girls and boys, our stories told about the land that taught us to talk. With mother's hand we learned to walk, travel back in time to the last ice age, with the sun's creation fully engaged. Spirits and heroes, tricksters and fools, the cast includes everyone in this unfolding stage of our Buffalo Cafe, nature's anointed play. Okay, everybody sing with me now. The Buffalo Cafe. Travelers Rest Choir now. The Buffalo Cafe. Harmonies. The Buffalo Cafe. The Dancing Buffalo, yeah! The Buffalo Cafe. Thank you very much. I do have CDs available. I have the new Lewis and Clark video, Confluence of Time and Courage. I'm the narrator on that. I have some of those available. And all the CDs, to include Blackfeet Storysmith, the latest release, primarily Dad's stories, edited and soundtracked. Thank you very much for coming. On Saturday, I believe at 1 o'clock is the first program. I think 3 o'clock is the second program. My kids and myself will be performing in the big tent. Thank you very much. Good night. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dreams really do come true.